Welcome to Keep What You Earn, your judgment and jargon-free zone for entrepreneurs of all levels. Get ready to learn how to scale your business, save money in taxes, and create a business that grows your wealth. If it feels like the financial side of business is like eating your vegetables, well then think of this podcast as the ranch dressing to make the process a little more enjoyable. My name is Shannon Weinstein. I'm a CPA and business owner on a mission to simplify money and empower others through knowledge. I hope this episode inspires you to take action, but remember that the information we share is for educational purposes only and is not individual tax advice. Now that we got that out of the way, let's start the show. So today on the show, I want to remind you about a document that can save you so much time at year end and save your accountant so many headaches. So this is a little bit self-serving, but this is something that a lot of business owners overlook and then end up paying for either in time or in money later down the line. So this is a perfect time to remind you that this is something to implement now in your systems as you're going through kind of post-tax season, middle of the year, kind of getting your bearings on how the year is going to go. I want you to revisit this particular area of your business, and that is the W-9 and the contractors that you've hired so far in your business. So the W-9 is called the Request for Taxpayer Identification Number and Certification, right? A lot of words. The W-9 is basically a document for any business owner that is used to gather information from contractors or vendors that they pay. The information is then used to fill out the 1099s that you have to do at the end of the year. Now, what business owners end up doing is they wait until the end of the year and their accountant goes, hey, I need W-9s from all these people. And what really should be happening is that you as a business owner should be collecting these proactively as soon as you hire your contractors. Basically, anyone you hire, anyone you pay a fee to for a service, you have the right to ask for a W-9 from them. Now, this doesn't mean you're going to issue them a 1099. It just means that, hey, can you send me the official document that shows your ID number and all your information so I have it on my records in case I do need to send you this. This is the business equivalent, guys, of when you order a drink and the waiter or bartender asks you for an ID, right? So it's just this quick little check of, hey, I just need to make sure that you can order this or make sure I can pay you because I need to make sure that you have a business EIN or a social security number under which you are going to claim this income. Now, it doesn't mean anything from a tax perspective. You don't need to file this with the government. You don't need to send this to anybody besides maybe your accountant for their awareness because they need the info. But it's your responsibility as a business owner to keep this on your records so that you can produce it to show, yeah, I hired this contractor or this vendor, and this is the information they gave me. So basically, you need to get this for anyone you pay a fee to for services. Okay. So if you are not paying for a service, you're paying for product, don't worry about this, but paying for a service. So let's use some examples here. If you're hiring a social media manager, a VA, a OBM, ad agency, you're hiring an accountant, a bookkeeper, you're hiring salespeople, anybody for a service where they are showing up and they are providing you a service, and they are not an employee, right? An employee will get W-4 and all of the paperwork for their employment, which is more formal. This is where you're hiring another business owner or a freelancer or a contractor to provide services to you. And we have several episodes, by the way, including those with Jackie Koch, who's an HR expert. We have a lot of episodes, if you go back, on employee versus contractor, the difference between those two things and how to classify people. But this episode assumes that we're talking about a contractor that's legitimately a contractor and that you have to collect the W-9 from them to initiate the relationship. Now, why do you need to ask for this now? You have to ask for this now because here's the thing. It's the best practice while you are engaging in this conversation, while you are going through your contract, while you are invoicing and paying, right? You're establishing a relationship, do it right away because there's a lot of paperwork being exchanged, a lot of formalities. Just have it included with your contract. So a best practice for you as a business owner, if you're going to hire someone to do services for you, is to have a contract in place that you're going to use that's under your terms, right? I don't like to rely on my contractors' contracts if I can avoid it. So I like to have a contract ready to go to make it easier for the process. So if I'm going to hire you as a graphic designer, for example, I may have a graphic designer contract where I use to hire you. Now, if you have your own, cool, you can bring your own. But the key thing here is while we're doing the contract, along with that should come a W-9 attached to the contract. A contractor or vendor or provider who's really savvy will already have it included. But there are a lot of people out there, including folks who listen to this podcast, who are contractors and service providers who don't know about this. So if you're on the other side of the transaction and you're the one providing services, this is also a best practice to just attach your W-9 as like an appendix to the contract. It's perfect. I would definitely request a W-9 before you make a payment. It's kind of like a receipt in a sense. It's just saying, hey, like I just want to make sure this is all legit, above board, my records are up to date. And part of it is the motivation to withhold payment until you get that W-9 from them. Now, you're going to get some resistance to that because there are certain folks who don't receive 1099s, right? So there's a couple of reasons why they wouldn't give you a 1099, or excuse me, wouldn't give you a W-9. Number one is if they are a foreign contractor, then they don't send you a W-9. They send you what's called a W-8 BEN, B as in boy, EN. And that is a document that's equivalent to the W-9, I guess. But what it's saying is I'm a foreign contractor and I'm immune to this process. So regardless, you need to have a document for every one of your contractors, period. This is how it should be. You should have a file for every person you hire, right? Whether that be contractor or employee, but you should have a file for each contractor, either in your Google Drive, your document storage somewhere that has their contract agreement in place, their W-9 or W-8 BEN, and a history of the 1099s you've given them. That would be rock solid documentation, because if you ever get audited, one of the things they always ask for is, do you have the invoices, the receipts, and the 1099s that you paid these people to take the deductions? This would basically bulletproof that deduction if you had all of those things in that folder for the contractor. So that would be my tip to you, is to include that W-9 in their file. And also make sure that when you collect these, that it is up to date. So let's say you hired someone in like 2018, you got a W-9 from them and you still have that W-9. So here's what you need to do. You need to kind of either collect a new one if there's updated information, or have and we do this, it's a blast email that goes out that's like, hey, contractors and vendors of Financial Solutions, we are in the process of preparing for year end. This goes out in like November, by the way, or October. We're in the process of preparing for year end, and we have your W-9 on file. However, if your address has changed or any information about your business has changed, including your tax elections, your classifications, like for example, if you elected S Corp this year, that is relevant, and I'll explain why. So all of those different changes that can take place, right? We say, are there any updates you need to make to your W-9? If so, send one to Courtney, right? Send a new copy to us, and we get that handled. So we have a pretty good process of, storing, receiving, kind of facilitating this whole thing. And I recommend you do as well, especially if you hire mostly contractors. Now, let me go back to that corporation thing. A W-9 does not, a 1099 does not have to be provided to a corporation or S corporation, right? So once the vendor, the contractor, the freelancer becomes an S corporation or takes the election, right? Then they are now immune from 1099s, which is really interesting, right? So they're immune from 1099s. So now, if you are going to be providing it, you need to know that, because your W-9 says they're an LLC sole proprietor. You're going to issue a 1099 to them, and they're going to go, whoa, 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 whoa. I don't need that. And if they give you any resistance because they're an S corporation or otherwise, right? The way you know that is the W-9. So if anyone gives you resistance on getting the W-9, I would just keep pushing. And I would also get maybe a voice of authority in your accountant or someone, or this episode, send it to them to explain that how it works is, if they say, well, I'm a corporation, I don't need a 1099, so I'm not going to give you a W-9. Well, the W-9 formally puts in writing what you just said. And I would like to have that on file to support what you're saying, so I don't have to call you and have you testify in like an audit. I would rather just get this piece of paper and not bother you later. that is a really solid argument to not create any resistance here. And they are correct that they don't have to get a 1099, but you just say it's just part of my standard process to collect a W-9 from every contractor. So I understand their tax status and I understand their information and make sure I have an updated address on file. This could also be so that you have an updated address for gifting or for thank you cards or birthday cards or whatever. So you could use that as a tool as well to say, this is just how we collect our information on our contractors. We'd really appreciate an update from you or appreciate you sending that over. And it's really important to get this again before you pay them, because it's kind of a little bit of a carrot, right? It's a thing that not to say withhold payment and threaten it or something, but it's always a really good idea to extend one arm out with the money and one arm out for the paperwork, right? And make sure that you're getting that timely and not rushing to get those in January. It's always a cluster, man. It's always a cluster in January trying to get these things. And it's so important. And it can have consequences to your business if you don't get the W-9 and you don't file the 1099s properly. You can face penalties. You can also get your deductions disallowed if you don't have all the proper documentation. So it's just a really good idea to make this standard habit, make this standard practice. Make it like brushing your teeth when it comes to your business. Just have it be something that is in place and relatively automated. And you can kind of, I say set it and forget it, but you can delegate this type of process down to your OBM, your VA, and say, I want you to manage the W-9s and 1099 process. It's actually pretty easy. So you can go back to January episodes to hear more about 1099s, who gets them, how to file them. But this is the time of year, kind of mid-year, where I want you to start thinking about, hey, who have I hired so far? How can I get this stuff organized? And what W-9s might I be missing that I can get ahead on? Finding the right support that you need for your business can be so confusing when it comes to accounting and tax. Sometimes it seems like you can't find a CPA or a tax pro who actually understands your business, or they charge way too much for what you actually need. I've seen this for so many entrepreneurs. They are in a bad relationship with their accountant because they don't know what to look for. It is not your fault. So I created a perfect guide for you that is totally free. It's called the Money Pro Matchmaker, and it will teach you what your pro should be doing, questions you can use to interview them to find the right person for you, and a guide to evaluate them so you know you're getting what you pay for. Do not get stuck or screwed with the wrong accountant. Download the guide now at moneypromatchmaker.com. Thank you so much for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave a rating and review on your podcast platform. This small action goes a long way for podcasters to get our message heard by more business owners just like you. Be sure to check out the show notes for links to information about our guests and ways to get in touch with me. We'll see you on the next episode.